Today's conversation is sponsored by First Generation Capital Partners. If you're an accredited investor and you want to know about how we're helping other accredited investors keep more of their income, go to firstgencp.com/going long.
My friend who's in social work, all of a sudden started making, as much money as he's making in his day job from investing in some of my real estate deals. And it was truly incredible to see that, like a good friend make great money and he's in social work, real estate's a world he just does not know.
You're listening to the Going Long podcast with Billy Keels, the #1 podcast for long-distance real asset investing.
Welcome to the Going Long podcast. We're back once again to continue to help to educate you so you feel much more comfortable as well as confident investing beyond your backyard. And yes, I'm your host, Billy Keels, and we are back for another one of these exciting conversations, because today you get your pen and paper out. I'm just telling you right up front because it's going to be awesome. Before that, though, thank you so much for continuing to tag us, for continuing to share across social media. We really, really appreciate it. LinkedIn and Instagram, you're really, really active over there. So thank you for sharing it. If you're looking to leave an honest written review, you've got to just go ahead and do it. It's really, really simple. Just even if you need a little bit of help on the Apple or Spotify platforms, you can go directly to the link in the video and we'll have a nice little tutorial that can walk you through that. Also, too, if you are looking to check out any of the previous 300 plus episodes, just go to firstgencp.com/podcast. Once again, that's firstgencp.com/podcast. And you can find out all of the goodness and the way that we are, having every single podcast that has ever been out. But listen to this. If you are wanting to learn how you can build a successful business, maybe you don't come from a family of entrepreneurs, but you want to leverage the experience of others. And even sometimes when you have to make very difficult decisions in your life, like when everybody wants you to go left, you go right. What is that process like? And more importantly, when you are looking to continue to build your portfolio so that it provides you not just the income, but the freedom that comes along with that, then you're really going to enjoy today's guest. Today's guest is the president at Ashland Capital. We're going to get to the conversation with Alix Kogan, and we're going to do that just after this. Are you a busy, high-paid professional, someone who's made $200,000 the previous 2 years and also expected to earn $200,000 this year? Or maybe as a couple, you filed jointly and you've earned $300,000 the previous 2 years and also expected to earn $300,000 together this year. Or maybe yourself or as a couple, you have $1 million in net worth, not including your home. Well, if you meet any of those criteria, then the IRS considers you to be someone who is an accredited investor. And so that probably means you're a top producing software sales executive, or maybe you're a highly paid consultant. Maybe you're a lawyer, maybe you're a doctor or a business owner. You may even work for a professional sports franchise. Well, one way or the other, you've done a lot of really hard work to get to where you are. You've done 100% of the work. And nowadays you're continuing to get crushed by taxes. And that means you're only bringing home 50% of the reward. If you're tired of doing this over and over and you're looking for a solution to start to keep more of your money, you can go to firstgencp.com/invest so that you can start to keep more of your money, which means that you can start to have the freedom to choose what you want to do, when you want to do it, with whom you want to do it. So once again, go to firstgencp.com/invest to see how we can start to help you today. Once again, that's firstgencp.com/invest. So, you know what? If you want to understand how specialization and relationship building can supercharge your long distance investing success, then guess what? Today's the conversation you're going to want to listen to until the very last word. I promise today. You know why? Because today's guest not only began his successful career early on as the president of a building company, and I think he may have even done something just before that, but I'm going to keep a lid on that for the moment. He also today focuses on serving others through value-add multifamily as well as student housing. That's the specialization key. And he takes keen interest in surrounding himself with other positive doers. It gives me great pleasure to welcome to today's conversation the president of Ashland Capital, Mr. Alix Kogan. Alix, welcome to the show.
Hey, Billy. Glad to be here.
Hey, listen, man, I'm really looking forward to today's conversation. I'm just realizing there's a couple of things that you and I didn't talk about, but you know what? I think you're going to be just fine. On this show, we like to ask everybody at least 5 questions. You're going to get 2 questions in the beginning And then you're going to get 3 questions in the end. And in between, Alix, you're going to get a bunch of questions that I don't know I'm going to ask them, but they're going to be based on your responses. But the very first question to help us understand, to get to know a little bit more about you, is if you can help us understand, where is it that you reside in the U.S.?
So I live in Chicago, live in a suburb of Chicago called Wilmette, and we office out of the north side of Chicago.
All right, fantastic. Chicago, I always like to, I've got a number of friends that are there in that area. So Chicago, Illinois, a fellow Midwesterner. Question number 2 is something that I'm a big fan of positivity, Alix, and I always want to find out from our special guest, and today you're our special guest, what's the most positive thing that's happened to or for you in the last 24 hours?
Last 24 hours. My kid won back-to-back basketball games, and I've never seen him with as much confidence as I have yesterday when he did that. That was pretty amazing. I have an 8-year-old who is obsessed with basketball.
I've got 2 older kids too that are absolutely obsessed. I know what that feels like. And so thank you very much for sharing that positivity. And when you see your kids and they're just on top of their game and emotionally and physically, it's absolutely fantastic. So really appreciate you sharing that with us. Alix, I'm going to share a little something about myself with you. And that is, I'm a recovering perfectionist. And what that means is sometimes it has me do things that are really unrealistic because I like to set the bar really, really high. So trying to tell your entire backstory in like a 1.5 second opening is something that's absolutely impossible to do. So I was really hoping you could help me out by sharing your backstory in your own words. And also if you could help us to understand what are some of the major decisions that you've made to get to this point in your journey. And then we'll see where you and I take the conversation from there. But I will say one thing. I kind of set you up to share something maybe very special that most people don't know about you, but I'll just kind of leave it there. So please help us understand your backstory and talk about some of the major decisions, please.
Sure. I think it's good to start with, I grew up in a very entrepreneurial family. So what I saw every day is my parents, my brother, everybody as an independent entrepreneur, hustling, starting their own businesses, and never having, what most of us call conventional jobs, working for a corporation. So I think that's where it starts. And in a way that built tremendous amount of confidence in me to be able to do that. It seemed like a natural, although I did have a pivot that you so graciously set me up for. And, I think because I saw that and I saw certainly the benefits and the cons of that lifestyle, I was the kid who, not kid, I guess I should say, but, young adult at that point that said, maybe I don't want to follow in the family footsteps. Maybe I don't want to be in real estate construction development, which is what my family did. And maybe I want to do something that's more rewarding, at least on a, spiritual and giving back sort of dynamic. So I decided to teach high school. And I traveled a bit, taught overseas, but ultimately landed teaching high school first in Chicago as a student teacher, and then on a Navajo reservation in Arizona. So almost like a Peace Corps experience teaching high school, as you can imagine, on a Navajo reservation was not your typical job. So I did that for 1.5 years and had a great experience, but ultimately it was not the life that I wanted. It was rewarding in many ways, but challenging in as many ways. So I was trying to figure out who and what I wanted to be, and although I wanted to save the world and I had that kind of young, dumb, romantic vision, I decided to actually go back to my roots. And started a construction development company in '98 after I quit teaching after about 1.5 years. So that's when it started. So I went, I sort of had the confidence, started my own businesses, went a different direction, and then ultimately had the confidence to say, I really do want to work for myself, and just jump right in. I went to work for somebody else for 1 year and then started my company.
Wow, there's a lot that we can unpack from just, getting to the point where you started your own company. And I know there've been different versions of that as well, right? Different ventures. But I'm just curious, like, I just want to know, because inquiring minds want to know. So you're surrounded by entrepreneurs growing up. Like, you said something that it gave you the confidence to go out and do that. Whereas I'm thinking probably the majority of people who are listening are going, that just completely would have scared me, because you had no experience, you had nothing, even though you'd been surrounded by it. And so I'm curious, not just about that. Well, actually, that's kind of setting up the question. I'm more interested, because you were surrounded by entrepreneurs, which is not the quote unquote norm. What in the world did the family, like, you're not the family, but you're the people you were surrounded by, when you decided to go into education? Because that's literally at the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah. Well, there was a split decision. So my dad was disappointed because my dad is he's passed now, but a true, capitalist. And there's another layer to this. So my family actually immigrated from Russia, Kyiv, to be more exact. Today it's Ukraine. Yeah. But back then it was the former Soviet Union. So my dad brought us so that we can have opportunity, so we can be entrepreneurs, so we didn't have to get stuck, in what was back then former Soviet Union. Mm-hmm. So for him, when I told him I wanted to be a teacher, it was a bit of a letdown. My dad, in his Russian accent would say, "Oh, you could be lawyer, you could be doctor, you could be this, you could be," So he wanted that for me. And a lot of sort of his view on success was monetarily driven. Of course, my mom, on the other hand, she is the more sort of compassionate, and so she was excited for me. She said, "This is great. If this is what you want to do and this is going to make you happy, fantastic. With the caveat, I hope you can make enough money to live." So really, that was the response.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate that, because it's one of those things where, you make decisions in life, and typically others are affected by the decision that you make. But very few times are we saying, well, okay, well, how did that influence you one way or the other? Ultimately, you made the decision to do that. I find it very interesting, Alix, that you, that when you were teaching, you taught at a Navajo reservation, you taught internationally, and in Chicago. So you brought in also very unique perspectives to this very classic, what I would say, type of a role. What was your motivation behind to kind of do that, especially the Navajo reservation and internationally?
Yeah, no, good question. So I guess what I left out is through my early and mid 20s, all I did was travel around the world. I was, obsessed with seeing the world and having experiences. So I taught in Taiwan. I would spend 6 to 12 months overseas, backpacking. But it was more than, just sort of like leisure. It was like I really wanted to immerse myself in the culture and take, language classes and drumming classes and everything, to really experience the culture. So when I realized that I wanted to, was ready, so to speak, to start on my career path, it seemed like, teaching at a reservation was a combination of both. It was a cultural experience, but it was starting down my path of being an educator. And, truth be told, I'm a little bit of a off the beaten path kind of guy. Everybody's going left, I'm going right. So it felt right to me. It felt a little bit of this is back to the young and dumb perceptions, but it seemed to me to be a sellout to go, teach in a middle-class suburb of Chicago or wherever. So I had to choose something a little bit more different.
Yeah, something that's different, something that was more in line with your values. And it's interesting. I hear you as I hear you saying these words, I'm thinking, well, I'm a guy who's originally from Columbus, Ohio. I've been extremely fortunate, worked and traveled throughout 86 countries. I've spent the last 22 years living in Europe between France, Italy, and Spain. And there is something about having that international experience that really opens your mind to creating the new art of the possible, right? Because if you're doing the same thing that everybody else did all the time, well, then that starts to form your worldview. And when you take these different forms of different points of view in. At least it challenged your mindset a little bit and helps you to grow. Speaking of which, I don't know if many people have asked you this question, but because of who you are and because of the impact that you're continuing to make on others, I'm just curious, like a lot of the outputs that we get are due to the inputs that we receive. And so where do you typically like to bring your sources of, let's say your sources of the new reality or your sources of truth? Where do those typically come from for you?
They come from, several different places. I mean, I'm part of some professional groups where I'm surrounded by super successful entrepreneurs and mostly, incredible people. In fact, the group I'm part of is called Tiger 21. And when I was introduced to it, I was very intimidated because it's really super ultra high net worth group of guys. And I said, I'm wealthy, but when I heard there's billionaires in the group, I'm not at that level. Right. And frankly, I don't even want to be at that level. So I was really intimidated, but there was one thing that the chairperson said, and he said, we don't yes, there's a minimum sort of net worth criteria, but we don't let the typical rich jerk into the group. We're really focused on just really humble, quality people that want to give back, that want to support all the members and build a tremendous community of friends and mentors and just a great network. And that's ultimately what justified me, committing the resources and time to do it. So that's a group that really serves me well. And, it's basically a board of directors that whether it's business or personal, looks you in the face and say, hey, I don't think you're holding up your end of the bargain here. Like, you need to do X, Y, Z. Or on a personal front, you keep saying you want to spend more time with your kid. You got to do it. You can't talk about it. So those are the kind of inputs, as you phrased it, really serve me well. And then, I think on a more informal level, it's your friends and your family. They're the ones that are going to turn the mirror on you and say, are you doing what you really want to do here? And
so I want the Going Long family to really pay attention to what Alix just stated. He gave you two different sources of inputs, right? And he's giving his own example. But what I'm also taking from is they both are based on relationships. People were probably thinking you were going to say some kind of news source or some kind of website. But at the end of the day, the things that we do are heavily influenced and based on the relationships that we have, that we create, and that we nurture. And so I appreciate you sharing that with us in terms of the inputs that you also have to help you create your source of your truth. So another thing, I want to pivot a little bit, Alix, and I know you are helping people, and we talk about specialization in the very beginning, and you've chosen to not only nurture relationships, and that's something that's very important for you, both family and externally, but also too, you're helping people. I know specifically you've got an area where Ashland Capital is helping others, kind of in two different areas of specialization today. Could you talk about that and kind of how that has evolved and why you've chosen these two areas of specialization?
Sure. In terms of helping people, that's truly the way it started. I mean, I was helping myself by investing in real estate. And as soon as I started my construction and development company, we were building for people, we were developing real estate. And then with those funds, I was buying any kind of rentals that I can get my hands on. And back then, we called it college rentals. I was in Colorado for 20 years. That's where I started my company. Fort Lewis College was there. So it was a natural for me to rent to college students. And I had a really great experience doing that. And over the course of the years, a few friends were like, hey, you know what you're doing, obviously, can I invest with you and let's buy a rental? And I really resisted it for many, many years just because I didn't want to cross that line between friends and any kind of business. I've had some intersections of that throughout the years with working with my own family, and there was good and bad. So very conscious of that. Anyways, I fast forward 20 years and I had bought a bunch of real estate, built my own portfolio. We self-managed it. It was a bunch of scattered sites, smaller assets, and it just became very challenging. But towards the end of that run, more and more people kept asking, can we invest? And as long as, they recognized that I was the lead, I didn't have, 19 active daily partners, I started taking in a few bucks here and there, so to speak. And it was great because they're like, man, this is amazing. My friend who's in social work, all of a sudden started making, as much money as he's making at his day job from investing in some of my real estate deals. And it was truly incredible to see that, like a good friend make great money, and he's in social work. Like, real estate's a world he just does not know. Yeah. So that's how it started. And, I could tell you more details of how that path went, but that's how it started.
Okay. And that started you down the path, both in the student housing and then from the multifamily value add. Was it just a build on from that, or was it just because you had you'd seen that you could take it to the next level?
It was both simultaneously. So I had college rentals, I had apartments, I had single family homes, I had mixed use, commercial. So I had a bunch of different real estate. I think the real pivot happened in about 2017, 18, where I decided to sell the entire portfolio. And then I really started buying larger institutional assets. And that's when I got comfortable with taking in truly outside money, where all of a sudden your friend is referring a coworker and their friends and family, et cetera. And that's when sort of the official syndication model started.
Okay. And it's, different levels, but I kind of watched the smile, and hopefully you see the smile on Alex's face when he mentioned that, for a while, and it was very similar to me, Alex, I didn't feel comfortable because I didn't grow up with money. So usually I saw people fighting over money. And so the last thing I wanted to do in my life was mix family, friends, specifically friends and money. I was like, no way, I'm absolutely doing that. Not even close. And when people continue to come back and say, hey, listen, like you're explaining what you're doing, you seem to have a lot of control over this and you know what's going on. And I've got this money that's just sitting here in the bank. I know you, I trust you, I like you, but I was like, sorry, man, I can't do it. And so it was years of saying no. And eventually you get to a point where you say, okay, well, yeah, I want to professionalize this. I want to make this something that can truly add value to others. Trusting that you're enjoying today's conversation. And you know what? If you're tired of getting crushed by taxes and you're looking for greater freedom to be able to choose what you want to do when you want to do it, make sure that you go to firstgencp.com/going long and see how we can help you today. Let's get back to the conversation. Maybe you could expand a little bit on that, because I know that as you are helping others, the approach to that really busy, like the person I used to be, right? I was a super busy exec and flying all over Europe, Middle East, and Africa, managing $100 million business. It felt good, but I knew that was there was a certain moment that was going to have to stop, because I didn't want to keep doing that for such a long time. But that person who's so used to having so much control during the day, and outside, they weren't looking for something new. But as a passive investor, there's a portion of control you lose, but they're feeling trapped in between. Like they want to do it, but they're still the day job's pulling. How do you help that person to get clear on, what would potentially be the right decision for themselves?
There's no right answer. I think what I try to do when we have an investor call and somebody wants to know, should they continue owning, a handful of rentals, or should they invest in multifamily? I give them my story where I was that guy. I had a handful of rentals, then I had a handful more, and I got to where I got. But the process was painful. You learn what to do, you learn what not to do. But at the end of the day, when I look back, I wish I would have started with larger institutional assets a lot sooner. I don't like to look in the rearview mirror, but if that's one takeaway, I wish I would have done that. So I try to explain to them that it's just another option. It's an option that provides them a great tax advantage. It's an option that that eliminates the headache factor. They're not the ones that are going to get the phone calls, that the toilet's running and this or that. So, once you start talking through the pain points of what doing it themselves means, and then the time that they're taking away from their day job or their business, whatever they're doing, it starts to resonate. And that ultimately are all the things that I went through. If I would have created a roadmap and strategically said, this is the way you should allocate your time from this business to that business, I would have been much more efficient and grown even faster. But again, I'm extremely grateful for where I am. But that's the message. So if that resonates with people, great. They invest with us and they get addicted and they refer their friends. But I'm not one to try to convince anybody of anything. If it resonates, great.
And this is one I should just like the hair standing up on the back of my neck. Like it's perfect because I would say it's about how do you help someone make an informed decision? Because there is you don't convince people of stuff, right? You just share your story, the things that have happened to you. And one of the things that you also mentioned, and I think we tend to underestimate, especially when you're in these high paid roles, working at big companies, which I am a big fan of big companies. I was there for 26 years and got a lot of really positive things out of them. Is we tend to undervalue our time and the amount of time that it would take you to have, and speaking from experience, it takes to manage 20 some odd properties, and you're getting calls all hours of the day and the night, and you're getting a $40 or €40 issue fixed. But your time is worth probably 10 times more than that. And you tend to underestimate, like, hang on a second, you just took an hour out of your time to go fix a $40 problem. But if you look at it, what is your dollar per hour? And that was just something that doesn't work. So it's not convincing. It's just helping people to have a different perspective on the way that they are most effectively. And this is what I really loved about what you said is, how are you leveraging your time to be able to do the things that are the most important?
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing how many doctors and lawyers that are making, $500,000 to a couple million a year are, collecting rent, and they're doing these things, and, they don't really stop to realize that they could be spending that time with their family, which is invaluable, or they could be, writing another contract and at $1,000 an hour. So.
That's it. Well, listen, so I appreciate you sharing that. I wanted to come back on this distance thing, because I know a lot of times people are like, well, you got to live in the same place. And yeah, I'm not saying you can't do that, because I know a lot of people who are extremely successful. They have one location and they are the master of that location, and that's it. But like, if I just go to, someone goes to your website, they say, well, yeah, you're very active today in 11 different, I will call them locations. And you have 15 other target locations. So you're actively looking to go into other geographies. And sometimes people may think, well, hang on a second, you got to just be the master of the area that you're in. Talk to us about that whole geographic freedom in terms of where you're investing. And I mean, for your company, but also for that person that maybe has always heard real estate, even if you invest with somebody else, it's got to be right where you can drive by and see it.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you have a structure and you're not a solopreneur, and you have staff and you have systems and processes, and the key here is, and you have the right partners, whether that be a property management group that really know the market. We don't just dive in. I mean, we may have a target market. That means publicly we're open to looking at a deal there. So if a broker or somebody off market sends us, we'll look at it. But we're very careful how we enter a market. We need to know that, for example, that our property management group has a presence there. We vet the market, we study the market. There's so much data out there that we can understand the trends, the demographics, the rent comps, the employment drivers, the population growth from our computer. Of course, there's nothing like being on the ground, which we do, but we feel comfortable doing it. We've got great partners in our property management groups. I have guys on my team that came from property management. I've got guys on my team that came from Blackstone that are used to just mining data and crunching every possible metric, really sophisticated models and aggregation of that data to figure out where should we invest. So from a distance standpoint, we're comfortable. But, as you said, it's important to be on the ground. So my guys are on planes. I'm on planes. and we visit our properties regularly. So we have a really good pulse. So it can be done. It's done by many, many people.
Yeah. And so, it's very similar to what you said before. At the end of the day, it's not just through theory, it's from actually being on the ground, and it's having the right systems, the right the people, and the right processes in place in order to once again leverage a geography, provided that and you said it also, it's really about the relationships. Do you have the right relationships, the right experience for the specific model that you have? And also that your investors will also feel comfortable with and be able to make informed decisions around that. So, the only other thing I guess would say, is there anything else that you would like to share about what you've got, what's happening at Ashland Capital that you haven't talked about, that you're kind of like, you know what, Billy, I think based on this conversation, this is something else I'd like to share with you before we get into the going long final three.
Sure. I mean, I think I'd like to just add that, we are, there's a whole craziness and disruption of the debt markets and real estate going on. And a lot of people are scared, which there's justification to be concerned and look at your portfolio and understand what's going on. We actually see it as an opportunity, and we think there's great opportunities. We have a deal under contract in Phoenix, and unfortunately for them, it's a forced seller because they made some bad decisions. And they're younger sponsors, and we're not well capitalized. We're buying at a great basis. So that's an example of what's happening, right? We want to be on the right side of that. We want to be well capitalized. We want to find those opportunities, and instead of them going to the bank, we want to buy them. So we're super excited about I think what's to come, and I think it'll be a small window. And then our student housing. A lot of people over the pandemic thought, well, people can go to school online. You don't need higher education. Well, if you look at the data, it's amazing that enrollment is growing tremendously at the right schools. Rent growth is off the charts at the right schools. So the fundamentals and dynamics of student housing couldn't be better. There's a consolidation where the smaller schools with less emphasis on education and athletic programs, they're suffering. And those students just pivot and go to a larger school. So there is that kind of reshuffling going on. So, that's what we're excited about today, our student housing and conventional portfolio, and the opportunities that disruption in this market could provide.
Well, and, to your point, I mean, whenever there is disruption, there is, of course, the chaos that comes along with that. And it also creates opportunities, and being able to have the clear focus, the teams, the processes, and the systems in place, then you put yourself in a position to be able to positively take advantage of the current situation. So I think that makes things that makes a lot of sense. And Alex, you know what? The thing is, we kind of have to get to the going long final three. And I never ask any of our special guests, and today you're our special guest. The going long final three, unless you tell me that you're ready. So are you ready?
Let's do it.
I mean, everything about you is like, dude, I was born ready. Of course, let's go ahead and do this. So it's really, these three are, well, for you, they're going to be super simple because you're extremely well traveled. So we started with you over in Chicago. And although I'm from the Midwest, I've been calling Europe home since 2001. So depending on when you're listening to this, you'll know how many years. I would really love for you to share with us, what is your favorite European city that you've either visited or is still on your bucket list to visit, Alex?
Well, I won't call it a city, but I'll call it a region. Tuscany is one of my favorite places. I'm going to age myself here, but I spent my 50th birthday recently biking through Tuscany, and that was an incredible experience. Perfect combination of biking, culture, and food.
Yeah. I'm assuming there was probably no glasses of wine in that region ever. Never, zero. Yeah. Okie dokie. So that's quite number one. And I'll let you go with the region, so we can go with Tuscany, Toscana. Second question is, I usually have a big thing around this, but I'm just going to ask you directly, because one of the things that happens as we are taking more action is we tend to either, and it depends on how you look at it. You may say you made a mistake, or you had a learning opportunity, or you had a seminar, or you had something like that, right? But whatever you were trying to do, it didn't actually work out. So in between that, there was a lesson that was learned. So I don't want you to think about what the mistake was. I really want you to think about what was the lesson that you learned from an action that you took in the past that you know by sharing that lesson today that you're going to help so many people moving forward. What's that one lesson you want to share with us?
For me, it goes back to something we touched on earlier in the episode, and that is not mixing family and business. And many people can, and I love the romantic sort of sentiment about having family businesses. But for me, I think it's a risk and not a risk worth taking. And I've taken it, and we've navigated through it well. But when you're in it, it's not good. And for me, that's the biggest lesson, is just don't mix the two.
Don't mix the two. We have a lot to talk about on that one, but we'll do that one off camera. So, and then lastly, and this will be easy for you as well. I always like to fill our minds with knowledge before you go. And I would love for you to share just one book. Like, what's one book recommendation? It could be whatever you want it to be, that would be helpful.
So I'm not going to give you a book, but I'm going to give you what I'm doing, outside of real estate and business, and that is a lot of nutrition and exercise education. So listening to a lot of books and a lot of podcasts on supplements, on exercise, on diet, and that's not something I've consistently done, and that's something I've done in the last few years, and it's been a game changer for me on so many levels. So my comments are, just don't get stuck head down building a business. Don't forget, you need the biggest and best tool you have is you in a healthy state of mind and a healthy physical state. So that's my bit of knowledge.
All right. No, I appreciate that. And so we'll take that on board because it is something that is extremely important. And it makes me, also just makes me think about to the very beginning of this conversation where you're telling us about being a member of an entrepreneurial family, and you're seeing all of, family, friends go down that path. You decide, hey, look, you know what? They're hustling, they're doing all this stuff. And you kind of get started, and then you're like, you know what? Actually, maybe I want to do something completely different. And not only do you travel around the world, but you decide that you want to do something that is completely at the other end of the spectrum, which is being a teacher, but not just a teacher in any place, but you decided to do it internationally. You decided to do it in Chicago. And then you also decided to do it in a Navajo reservation, but, kind of pulled you back to your roots. You say, hey, look, I tried it. At least I tried it. Doesn't work for me. Got back into your groove, into the hustle and into the business building and into leading teams of people. And, you got to a point, even when you're in Colorado, you thought, okay, well, you're going to continue to buy up your own assets. You're going to get this business started, and so you're hustling, you're doing all this stuff. And then you realize, like, hang on a second, there's a lot of different things going on, a lot of different assets. How about I pack this whole thing up, get started in a new way, and go bigger and make a larger impact in other places? Always at the base, based on the conversation that you're sharing with us today, it's the thing about being able to have continued specialized knowledge, and also being able to focus on building relationships and investing your time in the place that makes the most sense. And whether it's the way that you are learning and growing and giving to others, as you talked about today at Tiger 21 as a member there, but also more importantly, what you're doing at Ashland Capital, helping to educate others to be able to, free up more of their time. So ultimately they can do the things that they really want to do. And so I know that my entire Going Long family is thinking to themselves, Billy, just ask him the question, please. So I'm going to ask you the question, Alix. How is it that the Going Long family can find out more about you and more about what you've got going on at Ashland Capital?
Yeah, reach out anytime. So my email is Alix with an I, ALIX at ashlandcapitalfund.com. And our website, of course, is ashlandcapitalfund.com.
AshlandCapitalFund.com. So check him out. He's even giving you his email address. So feel free to reach out and connect with Alix. So and his team, ALIX. So listen, Alix, on behalf of the entire Going Long family, man, I really would just like to say thank you very much for deciding to invest your time with me, with us today. So thank you very much.
Yeah, Billy, thanks. Enjoyed it.
All right, perfect. If you can give me like 15 seconds, I'll have you out of here. Listen, Going Long family, Alix shared it all. He shared, his life experience, how he's helping others, the things that he's doing to continue to grow, to leverage time, even in this chaotic environment that we're living in today. He's recognizing by having the right people, processes, and systems in place that there is an opportunity to continue to add value to others. So take today's conversation, share it with a couple other people, have the conversation go from the theory, put it into practice. Heck, reach out to Alix and his team. And while you're doing that, I'll be here preparing for the next conversation. So until then, go out and make it a great day. And thank you very much. Trust that you enjoyed today's conversation. And once again, today's conversation was sponsored by First Generation Capital Partners. If you're an accredited investor and want to find out more about how we're helping accredited investors to gain their personal freedom even faster, go to firstgencp.com/going long.